I'm streaming to 2 of my channels as well.
Oh, all right. Fantastic. All right, everybody. Great day. Happy to be here. It's Matthew Brick coming at you from Ottawa, Ontario. And as always, I got my good friend and partner, Mr. Jim Gale from the Food Forest in Central Florida. Hey, Jim, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. We've had a couple months of rain almost every day. This is one of the first dry days. And the Food Forest is just exploding to life, man. So I'm very happy.
How long has that now been since it was Florida Sam?
29 months ago is when we started putting plants in the ground, baby plants. Like those bananas there that are now sometimes 15 feet tall, they were about 2.5 feet tall. So there's nothing here. Even these moringa, we propagated them from seed on our property. And now they're providing so much abundance.
Wow. How much food is that feeding your family now? You know, obviously not 100%. You're probably still going to the grocery store for some stuff, but there's enough food in there that really you guys could live off all of that, right?
The only reason we go to the grocery store is because I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to chefing. I am not good at that yet, but we probably 90%, we eat 50% of our food from the land now. And we are slowly getting out of the habit of or as how to use what's here, but 90% of the food we grow here or more goes back into the soil because we simply don't use it.
Wow. Well, again, just proving to people what's possible. So love it, man. Love seeing it. And I'm really excited about our guest we're having on today. Michael and I have known each other since around 2006. He's been an expert in private investigation, personal security, active shooter training, just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to keeping you out of violent situations and protecting yourself. So I really wanted to have him on the show today to share, you know, some of his expertise, his experience, things he's gone through over the years, and really why today it is more important than ever to know how to protect yourself and your family, keeping them safe from violence. So, Mr. Michael Julien, welcome to the show, my man. Great to see you.
Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. I got to be honest with you. I have done a lot of podcasts, never one quite like this or with the type of theme that you guys have. I love it. I support it. I'm behind it. And I'm excited to gladly talk about myself and what I do, but more kind of the stuff that you guys do and, you know, give my opinions and thoughts on that. So it's nice to actually break away from the typical conversations that I have. And I even have my own podcast with a different type of discussion. So this is pretty cool. I'm excited.
Outstanding. Well, we're grateful to have you on the show. And, you know, first, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where they can find you, what you do, and then we'll dive in.
Sure. Well, let's see. To give you a foundation, my father, after being in military and law enforcement, started a private investigation and personal protection company in 1967. I was born after that, though I may look like I wasn't. I'm younger than that, but not much. And so I grew up as a private investigator doing corporate investigations, civil litigation work for attorneys and insurance companies and stuff like that, doing bodyguard work for celebrities and high net worth individuals and corporate executives. And then 10 years ago, I created an active shooter survival training program after being very frustrated and angry, seeing good people die at the hands of bad people because they didn't know what to do. And I thought, well, heck, I can teach these people what to do. And I decided to do that. So I created my program, and we have now over 300 instructors of my program in 7 countries, and we're bringing more instructors in more countries online all the time. So that is what I spend my time. I've launched this year my own podcast called Down and Dirty with Michael Julien, and it is not about security or investigations, although because I'm in this world, a lot of my guests come from that world, but it's about people that experienced challenges in their life, whether it be any kind of abuse, any kind of discrimination, any kind of emotional crisis, how they got through it and the lessons they learned, because I want to help other people get through stuff like that by using other people's experiences rather than, having to do it the hard way, which I'm thick-headed. So I typically learn my lessons by screwing up and then figuring it out that it was a screw up and what the right way to do it is. So I'm pretty excited. That's kind of my passion project now. That's what I focus a lot of my time on, and meeting people and learning about life, because it took me a long time to realize that people are a wonderful resource for a lot of things, not someone that is looking out to get the best of you, which is kind of where my attitude was growing up. And now I love people, and I love being around them and learning about their experiences.
Man, that's fantastic, Michael. Wow. So you built a company with 300, did you say 300 trainers that are training your system?
Yeah, we've got over 300 instructors in 7 countries currently teaching my program. Obviously, Australia, Finland, Indonesia, they don't have guns, or not as they don't have guns like the United States do. And Matt, I've got probably 9 instructors in Canada. I even created a logo specific for my Canadian instructors. Instead of a star in the middle of the shield, it's got the maple leaf, and it's active threat survival instead of active shooter survival, because guns aren't nearly as big an issue in Canada, being used wrong. I don't think guns are bad, but I think they get used wrong, and then they're an issue. So I created it a little different for them, because you still have mass murders, you still have people that are trying to kill other people. They just are using edged weapons and vehicles, explosions, and fire, and so forth. So my program can be applied to any time it's preparing for and reacting properly to violence.
Yeah, that is so important in our world today. As crime goes exponential, I think what you're offering is very, very valuable for everybody to learn.
Thank you.
Yeah. What are you seeing in the crime trends right now?
Crime trends in a lot of places in California where laws are weak, and other places in the country like Detroit and Chicago, crime is completely out of control. And I believe that has a lot to do with weak laws that don't punish criminals or deter them from creating crimes, violent crime. I mean, theft in the homeless areas in San Francisco and Oakland, Los Angeles, San Diego. It's so bad that people are afraid to go out. In San Francisco, people will leave the windows down on their vehicles so that people can walk up and go, okay, there's nothing valuable in here, I'm not going to bash the windows out, and break the windows, and then they have to pay for new windows. It's that bad. Major companies are leaving places like San Francisco and Oakland. Major chain stores that we all depend on and shop at are literally pulling out because crime is so bad and there's nothing there to prevent it, or to even, if you go in, you can go up. I think you can steal up to $800 or something worth of stuff out of any store, and you'll get a citation. You won't get arrested, and you won't get put in jail. So I've got some pretty strong opinions on that sort of thing. But crime is getting worse, and as the economy gets worse, and as it gets harder to afford a home, it's gonna continue until we start saying, okay, guys, here's the thing: if you do bad things, you're going to get in trouble, and you're not going to like the consequences. But right now, there's no deterrent. There's no reason not to if you're so inclined.
Yeah. My buddies live in Costa Rica. I lived there for 11 years, and they had the same policy at the beaches. Just keep your windows open and don't have anything in your car. Otherwise, you'll come back to broken windows. Now, one of the laws they have there is if somebody enters your house with a gun and you have a gun, you have to wait for them to shoot first. Otherwise, you could be accused and convicted of murder.
Yeah, that's pretty pathetic in my opinion.
Oh, gosh. That's one of the reasons I'm living back here in Florida and not still in Costa Rica, actually.
Yeah.
So, Michael, what's happened? Like, why has this gone off the rails? Why are we seeing this increase in crime? Why are governments changing the laws in favor of the criminals? Like, based on what you know, what's going on?
Well, look, I don't typically get into politics, but you asked me a pointed question, so I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm also not a liar. Weakness, politicians trying to veil their intentions under the flag of compassion. Bottom line is this: we have to have rules and we have to have laws, and they have to be upheld and they have to be enforced. And I'm not one for communism or socialism. I've worked very, very hard my whole life to get what I have, have my little empire. I've got my 4 companies. I've got my lifestyle. I've got my toys, and I've worked very, very hard for those things. And I don't want to just give them away to everybody, because if you don't work hard for something, you shouldn't necessarily get it. It shouldn't be handed to you. I think that whole participation medal mentality, where we just treat everybody equally, no matter how much they do or do not contribute to the world and to society and to our communities and to our families. I just think it's pathetic. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's incredibly misguided. They like to say, compassion, because compassion's a good word and we all want compassion. But if you don't respect the rights of other human beings, I believe you should basically forfeit your own rights. If you're going to try and take something from me that I've earned, that I worked hard for, and you've done nothing, and then you want to hurt me to get it, buddy, I don't care. My father used to say it's better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6. So if I was in Costa Rica and someone broke into my home and they had a gun, they would not leave there alive. And I might go to jail, but my family would be safer.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and we've got crazy rules here too around that type of stuff, protecting yourselves in your own home. And it's just, I'd be the exact same way. You have to do whatever you have to do to protect yourself and your family.
Yeah, it's bad.
Michael, what you just said, it resonates so strongly. You're willing to go to jail to protect your family. And I couldn't agree with that more. I'm willing to, whatever may come, I'm willing to have that come. Because if it does come, then more people shine a light on and see how we solve all of it, right? And that is through healing of trauma and through taking the poisons out and using our resources wisely, right? And then creating mass adoption of that. So you also mentioned laws in the legal system. So what in my study lately, there's the legal system and then there's the lawful system. And I believe you're alluding to and referring to the lawful system, do no harm, right? That system is so powerful and so obvious to those of us who are willing to see it. What if a law is forcing us to do something that leads to suffering and harm, right? That's kind of a hypothetical question. So I just wanted to point this out. That's why I don't very publicly don't pay income taxes, property taxes, because I know where that money goes. I know what that money is used for. It's used to enslave us. It's used to create structures that harm us. Any thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, taxes are necessary to run a country, to build bridges, to build roads, to pay law enforcement and fire. So I would never make a blanket statement that income tax or property tax is bad. It's unfortunately oftentimes misused. I'm willing to pay my fair share. Keep in mind that the word fair is kind of the big point, and that's the one that gets skewed by our government and our politicians. Yes. Oftentimes, I have seen many times. Look, I've been either on the board or the president of the state and and national and international private investigation and security associations, and I have been to the Capitol building to fight for the rights of private investigators and security professionals. I've been to the Capitol, the state Capitol in California, and I've met with politicians. Unfortunately, there are fairly good politicians out there passing laws that they did not probably research well enough or long enough or talk to a big enough representation of the people that it's going to affect to find out that some laws, when passed, though well-intended, can really hurt other people. So many times well-intended laws are harmful to those that they never considered. So that's a really tough one. And I am not smart enough or educated enough to say I have the answer. I just know that I can spot something when it's broken. and our political system is damaged. Too many people get in on the inside of that have their own agenda, who want for their own needs and don't care about how it affects other people. So of course there's going to be corruption, there's going to be criminal activity, and there will be unintentional damage. Even when people are well-intended, bad things happen. For instance, as a private investigator, many privacy laws in California have been passed that were well-intended, and in fact, they were good laws for the people that they were meant to affect. Unfortunately, we've had laws passed where access to information was taken away from us, and we had a client that was trying to find their cute little 13 or 14-year-old daughter who either ran away or was kidnapped, and the cops are unable to do something, or their hands are tied or whatever. So we were unable to do things legally to access information to help victims, and that now gives the benefit to the bad people because now they are protected, not the victims. I don't know if I answered your question, but I tried.
No, that's beautiful. No, thank you. Yeah. Matthew, any thoughts?
I just find it fascinating how that continues to pop up, where the things that they're trying to do from a well-intentioned perspective, they also let it carry over into blanket everybody, which protects people who are doing bad things. Yeah. And I like, I'm sure the three of us here would probably feel the same way, is when you do things that are harming others, as Michael already said, your rights should go away at that point because of that. You know, all of us know, we all have an internal moral compass. Yeah. We know right from wrong. And sometimes people are desperate and have to do desperate things, and I get that. But it also, you know, when you do that desperate thing and are committing something that is wrong and harmful and evil, that there's a risk associated with that. And I think that criminals should know that that risk is there, and they should know what that risk is, and they should know that risk comes with serious consequences.
Yep, that is absolutely true. And this is not a magic formula. This is pretty cut and dry. And I'm a very black and white person, very 100% or nothing. I think the barometer needs to be, it's the old golden rule.
Yeah.
If you want your rights to be respected, then you respect other people's rights. If you respect their rights, you have a reasonable expectation of your rights being respected. If I'm not going to respect your rights, I have no reasonable expectation for my rights to be respected. If I'm a bad person against good people, I should be treated like a bad person and not protected. And it's not that hard. Now that's also a little fuzzy because I don't know about good people, probably good people, but innocent people have been charged and convicted and punished for crimes that they did not commit. So we have to be very careful with that. But if somebody is clearly violating someone else's, God-given and supposedly constitutionally protected rights, if they are violating them, and it's obvious, and there's no question, I just kind of figure, hey, if we let them know that their rights go out the window once they violate someone else's rights, a lot of people are going to start figuring that they need to focus on their own rights and those being protected instead of violating the rights of others.
Yeah.
Boom. Very well said. So, as a student of what's happening now for the last 17 years and quite obsessive about learning why what's happening is happening, I believe that the only groups that will get through this next, 2 weeks to 5 years are going to be local, self-reliant groups, communities that support each other. And because, there's a lot of reasons why I believe that. What you teach is one of the elements that I think is one of the most fundamental elements to bring communities around this idea of protecting themselves, right? Sure, call on the powers that be and the systems that are currently out there. But if those systems fail, we need to create local groups. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I certainly believe in self-policing, and maybe not to the point of vigilantism.
No.
But I think it's important to get back to our roots of taking care of the village, and the village taking care of each other. But oh shoot, there was a point I was just going to make, so I'll go past it and then it'll come back to me. I think it's really important that we. I remember what it was. I learned in my CEO group a saying: culture trumps personality. Now, to your point, here's an example. When some loudmouth walks into a public library on their cell phone, blah 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 blah, being loud, what does everyone do? Shh. Okay. Because the culture within a library is everybody shut your mouth and be respectful of your neighbor because they're focusing or they're reading or whatever. So one of two things is going to happen. Either that person, that loudmouth, is going to be quiet, or they're going to be pushed out of that culture and out of that community. If we go by that very basic standard of creating a culture of safety, of respect, of protecting your neighbor, of not violating your neighbor's rights, anyone from outside that culture that comes in will either be pounded into submitting to that culture, or they will be expelled from that culture. Either way, you end up with your culture being maintained and protected.
Yeah, I love that. That's exactly what needs to happen, and it's exactly what's been broken down from us.
Yeah, and in that culture, by the way, in that culture, children are brought up understanding and respecting that culture. So guess what they're not out there doing? They're not out there violating the rights of others because their mom or their dad will beat the living dog crap out of them if they do. And I'll tell you what, I was way more scared of my dad and my mom than I was of the cops when I was a kid. And I didn't get into trouble like that because I was afraid I'd get my ass whipped when I got home.
Yeah.
And that's what kids need to grow up doing, not growing up thinking there are no consequences. I can do whatever I want. I get an equal part of everybody's stuff, no matter whether I work for it or not. And I can do whatever I want to the rights of others because mine are so protected that even if I screw up, even if I take other people's rights away, mine will still be protected and nothing will happen. And that goes back to that silly damn participation medal thing. And listen, I don't think anyone should be bullied, but if you are going to not put in the effort, you should not get the same amount of reward.
So regarding the UBI, right, the universal basic income, the only way for that to be possible if by the threat of force and violence, money is stolen from people who earn the money and given to people who don't earn the money. Right. So I guess you're not a fan of that either, right?
No.
All right.
No, I'm not. No, you work for what you have in life. And if you don't want to work, then fine. Do I believe that people that are unable to work for that should get nothing and starve? I do not. Right. My mother was mentally ill. She had multiple personality MPD, multiple personality disorder, because of sexual abuse she encountered at young, horrific sexual abuse. Yeah. That really, really affected her. And later in life, she was so fragile emotionally, she was unable to work. Now, she had her own business for many, many, many years up until her 60s. And then it was her late 60s that she literally couldn't function properly enough. And she got assistance from the government. I had no problem paying into that system because my mother was a victim. And as a community and as a culture, we take care of our own. Yeah. However, she was it was impossible for her to go out and work an 8-hour day without having some kind of emotional, situation or emotional breakdown or whatever, because she was broken. I had no problem paying into that, and I will pay into any system to protect true victims and people that literally want to contribute but cannot. But those who choose not to contribute, knowing that they're going to get everything handed to them for free, I have no compassion for that. That's selfish. Yeah. That's not being part of the community. That's not being part of the culture.
Right. It's demanding something that you didn't earn. And I couldn't agree more. I'm a huge fan of voluntarism. And I, every day, voluntarily serve my community. And what I found from that service is the more I serve my community, the more they want to serve me, right? So it's this cycle of abundance mindset where everybody wins, and it's all based in voluntarism instead of the threat of force and violence. So what about militias? Like, I was kind of getting to this idea of local, well-regulated groups, militias, like is constitutional. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, the line can blur so dramatically on that you now have chaos and anarchy. And I think that there need to be appointed, trained, certified, licensed, whatever you want to call it, professionals, whether it be law enforcement or private. And there are private companies like my own, on many, many occasions after a disaster like Hurricane Katrina, Rita, Gustav Ike down in the Gulf. My company was hired to take teams of people down there and protect humanitarian relief efforts, companies trying to rebuild the infrastructure and stuff like that. However, we are trained, we are licensed, we are experienced. There has to be some rules and regulations that designate, okay, you qualify and okay, you do not. Because if anybody can go out there with a gun and start enforcing laws without training, proper training, good people will get hurt and rights will be violated, whether they're well-intended or not. So theoretically, I love it, Jim. I think it's a great idea. I think it's wonderful. Realistically, I think it would be too difficult to do properly and good people will get hurt. And then look at it this way. What if some ill-intended, what if some selfish warlord decides he's going to start a militia and under the guise of protecting the good, go out and start dominating the good and taking theirs for their own good. So
like the system we have now.
Theoretically, great idea. Will it work? Yeah. Absolutely not. I don't believe that we are sophisticated and mature enough because of all of the garbage we deal with for that to work.
So you mentioned that this will happen and it seems to me that what we are living with now is that system where unethical people have taken over. It's like an oligarchy, right? Where BlackRock controls Fox and CNN, Coke and Pepsi, Nabisco, and all of them. They all lead up to one ultimate controller based on my research. Have you studied that at all, maybe? Or
well, look, don't get me started on the media.
Yeah.
That's just, I have absolutely no faith. And it's so sad because I would love to read the news with my morning coffee in the morning without clickbait and without misguided baloney with an agenda. I don't trust Fox any more than I trust CNN. I tend to agree more with some of the Fox stuff that Fox puts on there, but I have to peel away the layers of their agenda just as much, or not as much as I believe as CNN. But I've been told this is scary. Al Jazeera and BBC, I have been told, are the best sources of actual real news without a spin on them, and they're both foreign news channels, which is. America is losing its credibility because we're putting out so much garbage in the media that you never know what to believe. And I know, from my intelligence community friends, the stuff that we're told on the media through the media, either side, is so far from the truth so often. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all. I understand human nature and I understand people's imaginations and creativity. And a lot of people, they like to hear what they already believe.
Yeah.
So that's what many of these outlets do. I just want to find one source of news and information that will shoot it straight no matter how much I like it or don't like it, because then I'll know what the truth is.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's an amazing world we live in.
Yeah, and I've heard that about Al Jazeera in the past. Not so much. Did you say BBC?
British Broadcasting.
Yeah.
I've
definitely heard about Al Jazeera being one of the true last standing, providing the truth when it comes to more mainstream media. I too do not trust it at all, and I do like the fact that we're seeing a lot of independent journalism popping up. Very sophisticated researchers that are doing great work. It's kind of refreshing, right? And you're seeing it, guys like, one guy I've really started turning to lately has been Sean Ryan.
Guy's awesome, man. Dude,
ex-military.
He's a stud, and I could never hope to be as good a podcast interviewer as he is, or have the network of amazing people to interview. But yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he's doing a great job, and he's brought in some incredible people that have very, very high level experience in obviously the military side, also in the journalism side. And one of the ones that I heard recently with him was he had brought over basically the head of the resistance to the Taliban, right? The Afghan resistance. And in that conversation, he just really blew the whistle on how the United States government has been funding the Taliban to the tune of 70 billion a week or something like that. Like
billions and billions and billions of dollars.
Billions and billions of dollars. After they spent 20 years inside that country working with them, all of a sudden to flip this all on his head. And, really it's disrespectful to all the military personnel that spent any time over there. And, him blowing the whistle on that, he actually went and organized a petition. And through that petition, although he reaches millions of people, he only had 60-some thousand people actually first sign that petition. Now, what he was talking about when he told this number was, it's no wonder we've been steamrolled by the government because nobody is raising their hand to do anything about it.
And you know why? They're afraid to have their name on a list that they could be, they could have backlash. That they don't trust our government, and frankly, I trust the structure of the system and the foundation. I just don't trust the players moving the pieces.
Correct. Yeah. So Sean went back out and did another. I think he made a little short video or something, and like called on his subscribers and really explained the why behind everything. And the signatures ballooned up to closer to 1 million now, and he thinks they have enough to go make an actual impact. But all that to be said was just how few people are actually taking action on the things that they truly believe are right, and just letting things happen because they think, like you just said, they're afraid to put their name on a list. They're afraid of the government and the backlash, whatever capacity that may be. But that position of fear, without stepping into our courage and our power, is letting us continually be steamrolled. And my question now would be, what do you think we could do, I guess, A, at a local level, but B, nationally, to resist that? How do we inspire the people around us who really want to say something, but don't? How do we get people unified around, because most of us are right down the center, like fuck left or right. We're most basically want the same thing. So how do we get all of us communicating the same way, on the same page, and actually standing in the courage to do what we know is right?
Well, a couple things. One, the way it is now is going to have to get so bad that it comes full circle. And I believe California one day will be a Republican-led state again. Not that I'm saying that Republican is the way. There's lots of idiots in the Republican Party and lots of idiots on the other side. I just happen to believe that they tend to lean a little bit more towards law and order and tough love. But things have got to get so bad that people decide on their own to go full circle to the opposite, because the pendulum didn't work here, so we're going to put it over here. The other one, and I think that this would be the best one, is a spectacular leader, a leader of the people, a Ronald Reagan who was Democrat, hardcore liberal Democrat when he started in politics, and then ended up on the other side. So obviously he's open-minded. Even if he went from if he went from Republican to liberal, at least I would know the guy's open-minded enough to make his own decisions and not stick by an ideology because of ego and never wanting to admit that he was wrong because he switched sides. I think we need a leader. I think, and regarding current politics, there's a lot of policies of Trump's that I believe in, like borders and economy and rules and laws. But I think we need a leader with the kind of charisma that Ronald Reagan had, and even Barack Obama. The guy was charismatic. People wanted to follow him because he's sincere, and I think he believed in what he was saying and doing. We need a leader of the people that is going to be, and I don't know, I'm sure there's lots of people like this that exist, but they don't want the kind of crap that comes with that amount of leadership and the weight and the having a target on their back. We need a leader that is believable, that is middle enough to go, hey, you know what? I understand and respect your viewpoint, but here's the logical reason why it may not or probably won't work under the current conditions. Look, I have a story. I have bodyguarded, for lack of a better word. We don't like that word. That's a 4-letter word. We use a personal protection. I personally protected some pretty big shot corporate executives and celebrities. And there's one in particular. We don't typically use names, so I'm not going to do that. But there's one. He's actually, I think he's either Canadian or lives in Canada also. Very, very, very big name. And his parents were huge actors. I spent some time with this man and a couple of guys actually who were very far left. And we would have political conversations, and they would tell me their perspective in a way that I would go, you got a really valid point. And I completely understand why you believe that way. And in certain circumstances, that may be valid, or that's theoretically good, but realistically not. But they didn't do it in a way that shut my ears or my brain or my heart off. And I listened to them, and I would respond in kind, and I would say, hey, you know what? Those are good points. Now, what do you think about this? This is kind of how I feel about that. And they would listen to me and they go, wow, you communicate that idea and that philosophy very, very intelligently. And that makes a lot of sense. And I guess I can kind of understand. And in fact, I might start thinking a little differently about that one piece. We communicated intelligently, intellectually, and emotionally without offending. We used common sense and logic and reason in our arguments, not just purely emotional, which oftentimes liberals are known for, being so emotional that reason goes out the window, and then not so stern and logical or reasonable like many conservatives speak, that they throw the compassion and the emotional element out of it, which turns everybody off.
Yeah,
I think we need a leader that can speak compassionately, intelligently, emotionally, reasonably, and logically about things as they are, and use common sense and logic and reason in their arguments, and not get so damned emotional that they piss everybody on the other side off. And in fact, so emotional that it seems like they will stand their ground and dig their heels in no matter what anybody else says. Nobody wants to have a conversation with anyone like that.
Just for fun, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we gotta just talk, just be able to say, hey, here's why I believe this is a better way than that way. And maybe I'm wrong, right? But here's why. And so I just had a fun one yesterday or 2 days ago. I did a post on Next Door Neighbor about dog poop, right? In our community, where I just came from before I moved here, there's these plastic bag bins all over the place. And right now, the process is your dog poops on the lawn, and you pick it up, you put the poop in a plastic bag, and you send it to a landfill. And I started my post by saying, I know this, some people get emotional about this, but I'd love to just have a really thoughtful and like logical conversation about what is the best way to interact with dog poop and how to think about it. And so many people got so triggered, even though I framed it like, let's please just have a conversation. I believe that it's better to, you don't want a dog poop on your neighbor's yard if they don't want it, right? But I think if dog poop's in your yard, the best thing to do for nature and for everybody's life on earth, for life on earth, is not to put it in a plastic bag and put it in a landfill. It's to let nature do what nature does, and that is to decay the dog poop, which guess what that turns into? Plant food, right? And anyway, so to your point, it just got incredibly kind of energized with pissed off comments about how people abuse their yard with dog poop. And I want to invite everybody listening to let the energy go, and let's just have a logical discussion to find out what might be a better way so we can go that way if it is.
Yeah, well, that all comes down, Jim, to good communication skills. And my very favorite class, actually art history, strangely enough, and communication in college were my favorite classes. And I learned the different parts of communication, that you're sending one message, there's noise in between you and the receiver that might garble that message, and then there's the receiver, and they're going to receive your message and your communication based on their past experiences, how you look, how you say it, all these different factors. If you go into a dialogue, setting some ground rules and saying, listen, I just want you to know that no matter what I say, I don't mean to offend you, and I'm coming from a good place, and I'm just curious, and I know I could be wrong, and what do you think? Because I value your opinion. You have just disarmed the person you're speaking to, so that all of the shit that might get in the way of getting that communication in a healthy way and responding, they're like, well, let's put this down. This person's coming from a good place. Yeah. It's not personal. And even if they feel emotionally about what they're saying, it's not personal, and it's not meant to offend, because they already told me that. Yeah. If you set some ground rules and you respect the other person and the ground rules you have set, there's no reason why people can't have an intelligent, logical, reasonable, and still emotional conversation without the communication stopping because of the noise and the preconceived garbage and all that other stuff. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
I heard, and it might have been on the Sean Ryan show, he was talking about I believe it was a police sergeant and the head of the BLM chapter. Two obviously very different thoughts on defund the police. And they were talking back and forth about, according to the BLM fellow, what should we be doing if we're defunding the police? Who is going to help people that are in trouble? Well, we need more people who are trained in social service skills, right? So his logic is, we don't need the police. We need people who can be handling with great communication and care and compassion, more from a social working perspective. And then the police officer said, well, what do we do if there's a violent criminal that has a gun? Yeah. The answer was, well, of course, give the social workers all guns. and then the police officer said, well, aren't we saying the exact same thing? What if instead we actually started training the law enforcement more efficiently around social work and great communication skills, and encouraging them to get out into the community and build bridges with the community instead of being seen as a threat to the overall community?
Yep. I love it. Yeah. I love it. I think that's brilliant. And I have a friend, Sola. She owns an executive protection agency in Los Angeles, specializing in providing female agents. She's from Norway, and in Norway, in order to become a police officer, you have to have a bachelor's degree. You have to go to college for 4 years to become a cop. I believe that we should provide so many more soft skill training, so much more soft skill training to our law enforcement people, because if they could go out and de-escalate a situation and nobody gets hurt and everybody walks away respecting each other, including law enforcement. Now, that's not always possible. I realize that. I'm a realist. But if they learn soft skills, if they learn de-escalation, if they learn, even if they don't like who they're talking to, but they appear compassionate, that person is a lot less likely to go off the rails, to react emotionally. And by the way, if you communicate logically and reasonably, it's pretty hard to argue with logic unless you just simply don't understand what logic is. But facts are facts are facts. And facts, typically you can separate facts from emotion, although you may be emotional about those facts. If we train law enforcement better and give them more tools, we can satisfy both of those needs. And then, frankly, we put more money into law enforcement, into their training, and put more cops on the streets, because they're not just, they're out there doing good and being perceived as good. And unfortunately, because there's such a huge divide between the boys in blue, and I've got so many friends in law enforcement, that I completely understand why they come home from work pissed off at the world because they've just been treated like crap. Then tomorrow they go to work and they treat other people like crap because hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that mentality. Let's give cops way more training and way more soft skills, and everybody will be off. But taking money away from law enforcement is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things I always thought to myself was, why don't we have police officers walking through neighborhoods, going to introduce themselves to everybody in the neighborhood? Right? You walk the beat, knock on doors, truly make some friends, build some relationships, get to know the people by name. Now, it obviously is more complicated than that in the big scale.
Yeah.
But I think it's possible.
Well,
It's a start.
you're getting back to culture, and now
Yeah,
you're talking about
yeah.
a culture of coexistence and cooperation between civilians and law enforcement.
Yes.
And there is no more beautiful scenario on earth than that, because my dad was a cop back in the 60s, and he said, if we came up and we had to engage somebody for any reason, verbally or any other reason, there was an unspoken law, rule, whatever, between law enforcement and bad guys. If the bad guys stepped out of line and they got their ass beat, they wouldn't complain. They'd say, well, I crossed the line and I got my ass beat, and that's what I get for doing whatever I did. Now, that's unfortunately nowadays it's impossible to have those unwritten, unspoken rules, because everybody abuses every right and every reason, and now they're suing everybody. But imagine if you had a culture of respect where the cops respected the bad guys and the bad guys respected the cops. There would be a whole lot more cooperation and a whole lot less crime, in my opinion.
Yeah. And you'd see that the general population wants to actually help law enforcement.
Absolutely.
Instead of the other way around.
You bet.
Right?
Now there's total support and backup, and that would be such a beautiful situation.
Yeah. Now, I don't live in a ghetto, but I would imagine that a lot of the times when police go into these neighborhoods to do work, that the majority of the people there don't trust them. They don't want to help them. They want nothing to do with them. So they end up hurting themselves in the long run because they have no bridge built with the people.
That's
true.
true.
And I think what a simple solution for police officers to do, to really take on. I know it's a big task. I know it's probably not the most glamorous thing, but it's compassionate. It's getting to know the people in your neighborhood.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
Jim, I think you're probably close to my age, but Matt, you might be too young. Do you remember the movie Colors?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sean Penn and Robert Duvall were cops. The old salty cop Robert Duvall was respectful to the gangs. He was respected by them. They appreciated how he treated them, and they would oftentimes, they were cooperative. They didn't have an attitude. They're like, hey, you show me respect, I'll show you respect. And then the young whippersnapper, Sean Penn comes in, and he's kind of a fly in the ointment, and he stirs things up, and they don't like him and they don't respect him. And that's a very good example, because if don't go in judgmental and don't go in with preconceived ideas of who you're dealing with. Now, that doesn't mean you're not on guard and prepared to react however you need to react. But if you go in with an attitude and you're disrespectful to anybody, you're not going to get a good reaction. Now, I think law enforcement's finally starting to get that, and now they're having sensitivity training or whatever, which that's also kind of a slippery slope. But I think just being respectful of people in general and talking to them until they've proven that they don't deserve that respect, that would be ideal. Now, it's not always possible in law enforcement. That's a very, very dangerous profession. So I don't judge anything. I've not been a cop, so I can't say that I know what they've been through, but I do know it's a tough profession. But I think as a general rule in humanity, if you walk up and you if you give someone respect until they prove they don't deserve it, you're going to get a whole lot more honey than vinegar.
Yeah, I had this incredible opportunity to go along with your point there. We went into a maximum security prison, and it was the toughest prison in the state. And we went right to the toughest block in the toughest prison in the state. All the doors opened up, and we're surrounded by hundreds of prisoners, many of them murderers, lifers, and all of that stuff, right? And we were in there 9 hours in different blocks in this prison. And I had tears in my eyes probably a dozen times. I hugged a lot of people, shook hands with a lot of people. It was one of the most enlightening and encouraging days I've ever had. And what these inmates said, well, one thing they said was that they all pointed to one particular person in the staff of the prison and said they made a bunch of claims about this person. I really can't get into details because it was a very public visit. But what I recognized and what they told me is that there's corruption throughout the whole system, and that everybody in there that I talked to wants help. They want to heal. They want programs. They want to be able to learn something so when they get out of prison, they don't go back to prison.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what we're doing, by the way. We're creating a path to freedom that is not a hypothetical. It's been demonstrated over and over again. When trauma healing programs are introduced into prisons, you can have up to a 90% reduction in recidivism, actually over 90% reduction in recidivism. And then when the inmates grow some of their own food, learning the ethics of permaculture and the principles of organic gardening, when they do that, when you stack those two things, this is not, again, a hypothetical. It's been done many times. And the prison industrial complex has taken these programs out of prisons because it's a money system.
Yeah.
And that is a conspiracy.
Yeah. There's a lot wrong with a lot of systems, and unfortunately the prison system it could use some fixing. And by the way, guys, I have to jump on a very important meeting in about 2 minutes. So I'm going to have to wrap it up, and I'd love to come back on and keep talking with you if you want to have me. And I'd love to follow up, Jim. I agree. Look, I'm not so delusional to say that just because I believe something is broken, I know what the fix is. And I don't want to say that if you don't have the fix, then you can't have an opinion. I have an opinion, and we all know that there's a lot of things like our political system, our criminal justice system, and our prison system that need some fixing. But I will say I'm not smart enough to know what the fix is, so I'm not judging anybody for allowing it to be broken. I just would like to see those things improved for sure.
It's such a wonderful connection, Michael. I'm looking forward to more chats for sure.
I would love that, guys. Love talking to you. This is a very fun conversation, and I've really enjoyed it. So I hope you have me back.
Yeah, brother. Definitely have you back. Thank you so much for making time for us today. Wish you well. Lots of love. And thanks so much for tuning in, everybody.
All right, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.